Hello everybody, my name is White Ninja. I'm a professional Starcraft II player and teacher, and today I decided to make a little tutorial video highlighting everything to do with Protoss. Now, I know that Protoss versus Zerg is one of the hardest matchups to get the hang of in all of Starcraft II. It's just really complicated, it's really complex, and it's just really difficult for the Protoss player to pull off. I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to show you how you can make it easier. So here we have just a normal Protoss versus Zerg matchup. We have 4 Zerglings versus 1 Zealot. 1 Zealot costs 100 minerals, 4 Zerglings cost 100 minerals. So if we just A-move these units into each other, logically, the balance should be 0. Protoss should kill every Zerg unit, the Zerg units should be able to kill the Zealot, and the game should be over. But it isn't. The Zerg units win with a 50 mineral advantage, so that's 150% more efficient for Zerg units versus Protoss. So, what can Protoss do to counter this? That may seem pretty unfair, and it is, it's pretty unfair. Zerg units are just broken like that. So, what is Protoss supposed to do? The answer lies within upgrades. So if we make the balance even, just size it up a little bit to make it seem better, and then just get the gas upgrades equal for both. So now Protoss units have +1 and Zerglings have speed. So it doesn't show it here, but that would make it 400, 400, and 100, 100. So technically, if we're basing it off of what we learned in our last matchup with the 4 Zerglings and the 1 Zealot, the Zerglings should still win because it's even. But if we watch, that is not the case. Protoss units should win with about 1 or maybe 2 Zealots remaining, depending on how it goes. So yeah, with this one only 1 Zealot lives, but that is still a win. You still win the matchup just by getting 1 upgrade, and they were both even. 400 minerals, 100 gas, 100 gas. So that's how you beat Zerglings with Zealots. Okay, so for the next segment, I wanted to highlight Stalkers versus roaches. This is probably the most common matchup that you're going to find in your Protoss versus Zerg games, simply because Stalkers and roaches are the most common units made by each of the 2 races. So if you ever talk to people that know what they're talking about with StarCraft II, lots of them will tell you that Stalkers beat roaches. Stalkers do 14 damage versus armored units and 10 versus normal. Roaches are an armored unit, so Stalkers get that 14 damage buff versus them. So a lot of people go Stalkers against roaches, and they think that it's a cost-efficient matchup. As we can see here, it's 375 minerals for the Zerg, 375 minerals for the Protoss, 125 gas for Zerg, and 150 gas for Protoss. So not only does the Protoss have a 25 gas advantage here, but they should have the match advantage because of the 14 bonus damage. So if we just A-move these into each other, you can see that that is not the case. Zerg units completely steamroll the Protoss units, and there's not much that the Protoss can do about it. So you might ask yourself, how is Protoss supposed to handle roaches with Stalkers? And the answer is probably not the one you expected. The answer is you can't. No matter how many Stalkers you get, no matter how many roaches you get, as long as the numbers and the mineral gas costs end up about relatively the same, the roaches will 100% of the time beat the Stalkers. You can go and try this for yourself, I'm not kidding. Roaches will always beat Stalkers in this matchup. So, the way that you end up having to beat roaches as Protoss is with Immortals. Immortals come from the Robotics Bay, which is a fairly expensive building to get, but if you don't get those extra Stalkers, you can compensate the cost and it'll end up being the same. So, roaches lose to Immortals because Immortals do 50 damage versus armored units. So 3 Immortals would do a total of 150 damage versus an armored unit. Roaches have 145 life. So this means Immortals can one-shot roaches. So I'm going to demonstrate this here. If we just want to get the Zerg units to have it be more even, there's only a 75 gas difference. That's not that big of a deal. Roaches aren't very gas-heavy units, so we're not going to count that as any meaningful difference. So if we just get these armies and A-move them into each other, you can see that it's not much of a competition. The Protoss units beat them fairly easily, and this is because of the Immortals. Another bonus thing that I didn't go over before is that Immortals also have this special ability called a Hardened Shield. Hardened Shield reduces incoming damage to a maximum of 10, assuming that the Immortal still has shields available. Roaches deal 16 damage, so this means when a roach attacks an Immortal, it will only do 10 damage rather than 16, even allowing the Immortals to have an even more cost-effective matchup versus the roaches. So this is how you counter roaches as Protoss. Up next, I wanted to show you guys a little trick that you can do as Protoss that'll help you win a majority of your games versus Zerg. So, as Protoss players, what you're typically going to try and do is secure an expansion. And the way that lots of Protoss players like to go about this is by getting photon cannons. Photon cannons are a stationary base defense, and they're really cost efficient versus Zerglings. This is almost always the case, assuming that the Zerglings can't get a surround on the cannon. So this happens when the Zerglings come at the cannon and they completely surround it like this. So all the Zerglings are attacking the cannon at the same time. This is going to let the cannon drop really quickly, and it lets the Zerglings come in here and finish off all these probes. We really don't want that as Protoss players. So there's a simple trick that you can do to counter this. This is called a probe hold surround. The way that you do it is simple. Usually you're going to have your probes like this, and they're going to be over here mining. You're going to have a cannon out front defending your base, and you're going to have the Zerglings over here. So you can see the Zerglings coming, and you can try and stop it with your probes. You can get the probes, and you're going to send it over here, and you're going to surround the cannon. When the Zerglings come up to get it, they're not going to be able to get as many Zerglings attacking the cannon at a time. As you can see, only 3 or 4 at one time can attack the cannon, and this lets it survive much, much longer, and that's completely game-changing. That just lost 10 Zerglings for the Zerg player, and you didn't lose a single unit. From here on out, you can feel free to go out and harass your opponent without fear of counterattacks, because he just has not enough Zerglings to be able to do that. So this has been a probe hold surround. So for my final example in my tutorial for beginning StarCraft II players, I wanted to show you guys how to properly counter AoE damage by splitting your units up. So Zerg has lots of high AoE damage units, whether it be an Infestor, or a Baneling, or an Ultralisk, or a Mutalisk. They all do really nice area of effect damage. And this can be really hard to beat if you're a Protoss player. It can be fairly frustrating, as I'm going to demonstrate here. We have 10 Banelings and 6 Zerglings. 6 Zealots, rather. And so the Zealots like to clump up like this, as you can see, and that's not very good versus Banelings. Banelings do concentrated damage in a small point. So if we just send these units at each other, we can see that the Banelings survive. They win the match with 1 left over. That's not something that we want to have happen as Protoss players. We want to be able to win all of the fights that we take, and that will help us win our matchup. So the way that we counter this is by splitting our units up as quickly as we can during the fights. It takes 5 Banelings to kill 1 Zealot. So if they're clumped up, 5 Banelings will kill all the Zealots. That's not something we want to have happen. So if we split it, it'll minimize the damage that these Banelings are capable of doing. So just by separating these units like this, we can see that we survive with 3 Zealots left over. And that's going to really help us take a cost-efficient trade and help us win our matches. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial for StarCraft II for beginners. Leave me a comment and I will be able to show you guys whatever you want to see. Feel free to add me in StarCraft II. My in-game name is ZERGASSASIN. My code is 108. Feel free to add me as a friend. Mind you, all of this footage was filmed in the StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm Unit Tester. That's an arcade game. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.